The Funny Man's Day, from Miss Bracegirdle and Others, by Stacy Aumonier. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Michael Maggs. The Funny Man's Day. His round, fat little face appeared seraphic in sleep. If only the hair were not greying at the temples and getting very, very thin on top, and the lines about the eyes and mouth becoming rather too accentuated, it might have been the head of one of Donatello's bambini. It was not until Mrs. Lamb, his ancient housekeeper, bustled into the room with a can and said, "Your water, Mr. Basingstoke," the intrusion causing him to open his eyes, that it became apparent that he was a man past middle age. His eyes were very large, goose-gog eyes, the children called them. As elderly people will, it took him some few moments to focus his mentality. A child will wake up and carry on from the exact instant it went to sleep, but it takes a middle-aged man or woman a moment or so to realize where they are, what day of the week it is, what happened yesterday, what is going to happen today, whether they are happy or not. Certainly, with regard to the latter query, there is always a subconscious pressure which warns them. Almost before they have decided which day in the week it is, a voice is whispering, "Something occurred yesterday to make you unhappy," or "Things are going well, you are happy just now." And then the true realization of their affairs and loves and passions unfolds itself. They continue yesterday's story. As to James Jasper Basingstoke, it was not his business to indulge in the slightest apprehension with regard to his condition of happiness or unhappiness. He was a funny man. It was his profession, his mission, his natural gift. From early morning, when his housekeeper awakened him, till playing with the children, all the children adored him, practising, interviewing managers and costumiers, dropping into the club and exchanging stories with some of the other dear old boys, right on until he had finished his second show at night, it was his mission to leave behind him a long trail of smiles and laughter. Consequently, he merely sat up in bed, blinked, and called out, "I am deeply indebted to your lambship." "Nobby's got hiccups," replied that lady, who was not unused to this term of address. Nibby was Mrs. Lamb's grandson. His real name was Percy Alexander. The granddaughter's name was Violetta Gladys, and she was known as Tibby. They lived next door. These names, of course, had been invented by the funny man, who lived in a world of make-believe where no one at all was known by their real name. He himself was known in the theatrical profession as Willy-nilly. "I am distressed to hear that," exclaimed Willy-nilly. "Hiccups at 9 o'clock in the morning! You don't say so! I always looked upon it as a nocturnal disease, the result of too many hic-haec-hoc cups." "You must have your fun, Mr. Basingstoke, but the poor little fellow has been very bad ever since he woke up." Willy-nilly leapt out of bed and rolled across to the chest of drawers. He there produced a bottle containing little white capsules, 2 of which he handed to Mrs. Lamb. "Crunch these up and swallow with a little milk. Then lie on his back and think of emerald green parrots flying above a dark forest where monkeys are hanging by their tails. In our profession the distress of hiccups is quite prevalent, and we always cure it in this way. A man who can't conquer hiccups can never expect to top the bill. Now tell Master Nibby that, dear lady." Mrs. Lamb looked at the white capsules interestingly. "Do you really mean that, Mr. Basingstoke?" The little fat man struck a dramatic situation. "Did you ever find me not a man of my word, Lady Lamb?" "You are a one," replied the housekeeper, and retired. holding the capsules carefully balanced in the centre of her right palm, as though they contained some secret charm which she was fearful of dispelling by her contact. The little fat man thrust out his arms in the similitude of some long-forgotten clumsy exercise. Then he regarded himself in the mirror. "Not 2 thumbs up, old boy, not 2 thumbs up. It's going, you know, all the Apollo beauty. Oh, you little depraved ruffian, go and hold your head under the tap." No, no, it was not the business of willy-nilly to be depressed by these reflections, either in the mirror or upon the mind. He seized the strop suspended from a hook on the architrave of the window, and began to flash his razor backward and forward, whilst he sang, "Oh, what care I for a new feather bed, and a sheet turned down so bravely, oh!" The raggle-taggle gypsies accompanied him intermittently throughout the whole operation of shaving, including the slight cut just beneath the lobe of his left ear. The business of washing and dressing was no perfunctory performance with the funny man. He had a personality to sustain. Moreover, among the programme of activities for the day included attendance at a wedding. There is nothing at which a funny man can be so really funny as at a wedding. One funny man at least is essential for the success of this time-honoured ritual. And this was a very, very special wedding, the wedding of his 2 dearest and greatest friends, Katie Easebrook, the pretty comedienne, and Charlie Derrick, that most brilliant writer of ballads. A swell affair it was to be in Clapham Parish Church, with afterward a reception at the Oatboy Hotel. Everything to be done in the best slap-up style, old boy. No wonder willy-nilly took an unconscionable time folding his voluminous black stock, adorned with the heavy gold pin, removing the bold check trousers from under the mattress, tugging at the crisp white waistcoat until it adapted itself indulgently to the curves of his figure, and hesitating for fully 5 minutes between the claims of 7 different types of kid gloves. A man who tops the bill at even a suburban music hall cannot afford to neglect these things. It was fully 3/4 of an hour before he presented himself in the dining-room below. Mrs. Lamb appeared automatically with the teapot and his 1 boiled egg. "You'd hardly believe it," she said, "but Nibby took them white pills and his hiccups is abated." "Ah, what did you expect, my good woman? Was willy-nilly likely to deceive an innocent child? Did he think of emerald green parrots and a dark forest?" "I told him what you said, Mr. Basingstoke. Here's the letters and the newspaper." The funny man's correspondence was always rather extensive, consisting for the most part of letters from unknown people commencing, "Dear Sir, I wrote the enclosed words for a comic song last Sunday afternoon. I should think, set to music, you would make them very funny." Or, "Dear Sir, I had a good idea for a funny stunt for you. Why not sing a song dressed up as a curate called 'The higher I aspire, I espy her'? And every time you come to the word 'higher' you trip up over a piece of orange peel. I leave it to you about payment for my idea, but I may say I am in straitened circumstances, and my wife is expecting another next March." There was a certain surprising orderliness about the funny man's methods. Receipts were filed, accounts kept together and paid fairly regularly, suggestions and ideas were carefully considered, begging letters placed together, with a sigh, in case anything could be done a little later on, old boy. Occasionally would come a chatty letter from some old friend on the road, or from his married sister in Yorkshire, but for the most part his correspondence was not of an intimate nature. His morning newspaper remained unopened. The contemplation of his own programme for the day was too absorbing to fritter away nervous energy on public affairs. Whilst cracking the egg, he visualized his timetable. At 10 o'clock Chris Reed was coming to try over new songs and stunts. At 11:15 he had an appointment with Albus, the costumier in Long Acre, to set the stamp of his approval upon the wig and nose for his new song, I'm One of the Goo-Goo Boys. Kate and Charlie's was at 12:30, and the wedding breakfast at the Oat Boy was at 1:45. In the meantime he must write 2 letters and manage to call on old Mrs. Labbery, his former landlady, who was very, very ill. Poor old soul! She had been a brick to him in the old days, when he was sometimes out for 7 months in the year, out and penniless. It was only fair now that he should help her a bit with the rent and see that she had everything she needed. Willy-nilly's life had been passed through an avenue of landladies, but the position of Mrs. Labbery was unique. He had been with her 15 years, and she was intimate with all his intimates. At 3:45 was the rehearsal with the Railham Empire Orchestra. He must get that gag right where he bluffs the trombone player in his song, "Oh, my in-laws, why don't you leave me be?" Perhaps a cup of tea somewhere, and then an appointment at 5:15 with Welsh to arrange terms about the renewal of contract. Knotty and difficult problems, contracts. Every one trying to do you down. Must have a clear head at 5:15. If there's time, perhaps pop into the club for half an hour, exchange stories with Jimmy Landish or old Blakeney. A chop at 6:30, giving him an hour before making up for the first house. On at 8:20. 3 songs and an encore. Mustn't forget to speak to Hignett about that spotlight. The operator must have been drunk last night. Between shows, interview a local pressman and a young man who wants to go on the stage but has had no experience. Dash round for a sandwich and a refresher. On again at 10:25. Same 3 songs, same encore, same bluff on the trombone player. 10:50, all clear. Clean up and escape from the theatre if possible. A last nightcap at the club, perhaps? Oh, but Berg Kraft wanted him to toddle along to his rooms and hear a new song he had acquired, a real winner, Bird had said it was, about the girl in the empty pram. Must stand by an old pal. Sometime during the day he must send 2 suits to be cleaned and order some new underlinen. A beastly boring business ordering vests and pants. He knew nothing about qualities of materials. Hosiers surely did him over that. Really a woman's business. Women knew about these things. Mrs. Lamb. No, not exactly Mrs. Lamb. He couldn't ask Mrs. Lamb to go and buy him vests and pants. A woman's business. A woman. Hey-ho, nearly 10 o'clock already. Chris Reed might arrive any minute. The funny man dashed downstairs and ran into the house next door. Tibby had already gone off to school, but Nibby had escaped, because at the moment of departure his attack of hiccups had reached its apotheosis. Now he was in trouble, because it had left off, and his mother now declared that he had been pretending. It took the funny man 15 minutes to calm this family trouble. Nibby putting it on, Nibby playing the wag. Oh, come, fie and for shame. Besides, did Nibby's mother think that he, Dr. Willy-nilly, the eminent specialist of Harley Street, was a quack? Were his remedies spurious remedies? Did you think of emerald green parrots in a dark wood, Nibby? Yes. And monkeys hanging by their tails? Yes. There you see, Mrs. Munro, it was a genuine case, and a genuine cure. If he'd really had it, Mr. Basingstoke, I don't believe it was thinking about monkeys what cured him. It was them little white tabloids, and we thank you kindly. Mrs. Munro, here are 2 tickets for the Railham Empire for the first house tomorrow night. Come and bring your husband, and then you will see that there are more people cured by thinking of monkeys hanging by their tails than there are by swallowing tabloids. That is my business. I am a monkey hanging by its tail, and now I must be off. Good-bye, Nibby, old boy. Why, if this isn't a sixpence under the mat! Well, well, this is an age of miracles. No, you keep it, old boy. Good-bye, Mrs. Munro. Come round and see me after the show to-morrow. Toodle-oo, my dear. Chris was waiting on the doorstep, a fresh-complexioned young man inclined to corpulence. His face glowed with a kind of vacant geniality. "Well, old boy, how goes it?" "I've got a peach this morning, Willie, old boy. I think you'll like it." "Good boy, come on in." The funny man's drawing-room was comfortably furnished with imitation Carolian furniture, a draped ottoman, and an upright collard piano. The walls were covered with enlarged photographs of actors and actresses in gold and walnut frames. The majority of them were autographed and contained such inscriptions as, "To my dear old Willie, from yours devotedly, Cora." "To Uncle Nilly, one of the best, Jimmy Cotswold. The Blue Girl Company, August 1899. To Willy Nilly, my heart's afire, Queenie," and so on. "Now let's see what you've got, old boy." Chris sat at the piano and unwrapped a manuscript score. "I think this ought to win out, old boy," he said. "It's by Bert Shaw. It's called The Desert Island. You see, the point is this. You're a bit squiffy, old boy. You see, red nose and battered top hat, and your trousers turned up to the knees. You know how when it's been raining on a tarred road it looks like water? Well, we have a set like that. It's really a street island in Piccadilly or somewhere. You're on it, and seeing all this shining water, you think you're on a desert island, and the lamp-post's a palm tree. You take off your shoes and stockings, and there's some good business touching the wet road with your bare toes. See, old boy, there's a thundering good tune. Listen to this. Tum-ti-tooty, rum-ti-tum, rum-ti-tooty-ti-tum-ti. Works up, you see, to a kind of nautical air, and then gets back to the plaintive desert stuff. Rum-tum-tum, rum-ti-tum. Then here's the chorus. Listen to this, old boy. Lost in the jungle, oh, what a bungle, eaten by spiders and ants. Where is my happy home? Why did they let me roam? Where are my Sunday pants? Good, eh? What do you think? Make something of it, old boy, eh? The little man's eyes glowed with excitement. Oh, yes, this might assuredly be a winner. It was the kind of song that had made his reputation. The tune of the chorus was distinctly catchy, and his mind was already conceiving various business. "Let's have a go at it, old boy," he said. He leant over the other's shoulder and began to sing. He threw back his head and thrust out his fat little stomach. His eyes rolled, and perspiration streamed down his face. He was really enjoying himself. He had just got to "Lost in the jungle, oh, what a bungle, eaten by spiders and ants," when there was a knock on the door, and Mrs. Lamb thrust her head in and said, "Telegram for you, Mr. Basingstoke." "Hey? Oh? Well, never mind. Yes, thank you, my dear, give it to me." He opened the telegram absently, his mind still occupied with the song. When he had read it, he exclaimed, "Good God! Poor old Joe! Yes, no, there's no answer, my dear. I must go out." Mrs. Lamb retired. "Poor old Joe! Stranded, eh?" "What is it, old boy?" said Chris. "Telegram from Joe Bloom. He says, 'Can you wire me a tenner? Very urgent. Stranded at Dundee.' Poor old Joe, he has no luck. He was out with the Queen of the Sea Company. They must have failed. Excuse me, Chris, old boy." The funny man hurried out of the room and ran downstairs. He snatched up his hat and went out. When he got round the corner, he ran. He ran as fast as he could till the High Street, till he came to the London City and Midland Bank. He filled up a cheque for £15 and cashed it. Then he ran out of the bank and trotted puffily across the road to the post office. "I want to telegraph £15, old girl," he said to the fair-haired lady behind the wires. Filling up the forms took an unconscionable time, and there all the while was poor old Joe stranded in Dundee, perhaps without food. Dundee! Dundee of all places! A bleak, unsympathetic town, hundreds of miles from civilization. Well, that would help him out anyway. True, he had had to do this twice before for Joe, and Joe had not so far paid him back, but Joe was a notoriously unlucky devil, and he, willy-nilly, topping the bill at the Railham Empire, couldn't let a pal in. When he got back to his own drawing-room, Chris was stretched at full length on the sofa, smoking a cigarette and drinking whisky and soda. "Sorry to have kept you, Chris, old boy." "It's all right, I've just helped myself to a tot from the sideboard." That's right. Now, let's see, it's 11:15. I shall have to wash out this trial, old boy. I shall be late for Albus. I like that song. I'd like to have another go at it. Have another tot, Chris, old boy. I'll join you, then I must be off. But he didn't get to Albus that morning, because on leaving the house he remembered that he hadn't called on old Mrs. Labbery. He must just pop in for a few moments. It was only 10 minutes' walk away. He purchased a fowl and a bottle of Madeira and hurried to 27 Radnor Street. He found his old landlady propped up on the pillows, looking gaunt and distant, as though she were already regarding the manifestations of social life from a long way off, and would never participate in them again. "Well, Martha, old girl, how goes it? Merry and bright, eh? Oh, you're looking fine. More colour than last week, eh? Eating better, old girl?" A voice came across the years. "I'm not so well, Jim. God bless you for coming." "Of course I come. I come because I'm a selfish old rascal. I come because I want to. I know where I'm appreciated, eh? Aha, now, don't you think you're getting worse? You're getting on fine. We'll soon have you about again, turning out cupboards, hanging wallpapers. Jemimy, do you remember hanging that convolvulus wallpaper in my bedroom in the Gosport Road, eh?" The funny man slapped his leg, and the tears rolled down his cheeks with laughter at the recollection of the episode. "Do you remember how I helped you, and all I did was to step into a pail of size, nearly broke my leg, and spoilt the only pair of trousers I had? Ha, 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 hee, hee! I had to go to bed for 4 hours while you washed them out and aired them. Oh, dear!" Old Mrs. Labbery began to laugh, too, in a feeble, distant manner. Then she stopped and looked at him wistfully. "You going to Katie Easbrook's wedding, Jim?" "Eh? Oh, yes, I'm going, old girl. I'm going straight on now." He hadn't meant to mention this. There's something a little crude in talking about a wedding to a dying woman. He paused and looked uncomfortably at his feet. The voice from the past reached him again. "You ought to have married Katie Easbrook." "Eh? What's that? Me? Oh, no, old girl, what are you talking about? Me marry Katie Easbrook? Why, I wouldn't have had the face to ask her, not when there's a good fellow like Charlie about." Like some discerning oracle came the reply. "Charlie's a good fellow, a good-looking fellow, too. But you would have made her a better husband, Jim." With some curious twist of chivalry and affection, the little man gripped the old woman's hand and kissed it. "You've always thought too much of me, Martha, old girl." "I've had good cause to, Jim. Good-bye." He walked a little unsteadily down Radnor Street. A pale October sun filtered through a light mist. and gave to the meagre front gardens a certain glamour. Fat spiders hung in glistening webs between the shrubs and Japanese anemones. Children were playing absorbing games with chalk and stones upon the pavement. Cats looked down sleepily from the security of narrow walls. He had to pat a little girl's head and arbitrate in a dispute between two girls and a boy regarding the laws of a game called Snowball. Life is a lovely thing, he thought as he hurried on. Poor old Martha, she's going out. He was, of course, late for the service in the church. In some way he did not regret this. He slipped quietly into a seat at the back, unobserved. A hymn was being sung, or was it a psalm? He didn't know. There was something about a church service he didn't like. It disturbed him at some uncomfortable level. Charlie was standing by the altar looking self-conscious and impatient. Katy was a ghostly, unrecognizable figure, like a fly bound up in a spool in a spider's web. 30 or 40 people were scattered on either side of the central aisle. He could only see their backs. The parson began to drone the service, slowly enunciating the prescribed purposes of the married state. Willy-nilly felt a flush of discomfort. It somehow didn't seem right that Katy should have to stand there before all these people and have things put to her quite so straight. Rather detailed old boy, he thought. Perhaps that's why a bride wears a veil. When it was over, he walked boldly up the aisle and followed a few intimates into the vestry. He was conscious of people indicating him with nudges and whispering, "Look, that's willy-nilly." In the vestry, Katy's mother was weeping, and Katy appeared to be weeping with one eye and laughing with the other. A few relatives were shaking hands, kissing and talking excitedly. Someone said, "Here's willy-nilly." Charlie gripped his hand and whispered, "Come on, Willy, old boy. Kiss the bride." The bride looked up at him with her glorious eyes and held out her arms. "Dear old Willy, so glad you came, old boy." He kissed the bride all right and held her from him. "God bless you, dear old girl. God bless you. May all your dreams come true, old girl." In most weddings there is a streak of pathos, but in theatrical weddings the note is predominant. It is as though the lookers-on realize that these people, whose life is passed in make-believe, are bound to burn their fingers when they begin to touch reality. Perhaps their reactions are too violent to be bound within the four walls of a contract. Katy's wedding certainly contained a large element of sadness. "She looks so sweet and fragile. I hope he'll be good to her," women whispered. The lunch at the Oatboy Hotel was hilarious to an almost artificial degree. A great deal of champagne was drunk, and toasts were prolific. It was here that willy-nilly came in. The funny man excelled himself. He was among the people who knew him and loved him. He made goo-goo eyes at the bridesmaids, he told stories, he imitated all the denizens of a farmyard, he gave a mock conjuring display, and his speech in proposing the health of the bride's father and mother was the hit of the afternoon. He was not allowed the principal toast, as that had been allocated to Charlie's father, who was a stockbroker. To the waiter who hovered behind chairs with napkined magnums of champagne, he kept on saying, "Not too much, old boy, I've a rehearsal at 3:40. Nevertheless, he drained his glass every time it was filled. The craving to be funny exceeded every other craving. Willy-nilly had knocked about the world in every kind of company. It took a lot to go to his head. It was almost impossible to make him drunk. When at 3 o'clock it was time for the bride and bridegroom to depart, he was not by any means drunk. Certainly not so drunk as Charlie, but he was in a slightly detached, comatose state of mind. He kissed the bride once more, and to Charlie he said, "God bless you, old boy. Be good to her. You've got the dearest woman in the world." And Charlie replied, "I know, old boy, you've been a brick to us. You oughtn't to have sent the cheque as well as all that silver. Good luck, old boy." "Oh, my in-laws, why don't you leave me be?" It seemed but a flash from one experience to another, from pressing the girl's dainty shoulders in a parting embrace, to stamping about on the draughty stage and calling into the void, "Now, Mr. Prescott, I want a little more slowing down of this passage. Do you see what I mean, old boy? It gives me more time for the business." The gag with the trombone player was considerably improved. Must keep going, doing things. A contract to sign at 5:15. He was feeling tired when the rehearsal was over. Mustn't get tired before the 2 shows tonight. Perhaps he could get half an hour's sleep after seeing the agent before it was time to feed. Someone gave him a cup of tea in the theatre, and a dresser told him a long story about a disease in which his wife's father got through sitting on a churchyard wall, waiting for the village pub to open at 6. There appeared no interval of time between this and sitting in front of a suave, furtive-looking gentleman named Welsh, who handled him on behalf of United Varieties Agency. He was conscious of not being at his best with Welsh. He believed that he could have got much better terms in his new contract, but somehow the matter did not appear to him to be of great importance. He changed the subject and told Welsh the story about the sea captain and the Irish stewardess. Welsh laughed immoderately. After all, quite a good fellow, Welsh. He was anxious to get away and see some boys at the club. Jimmy would certainly have a new story ready. He hadn't seen Jimmy for 4 days. Jimmy was certainly there, and not only Jimmy, but old Barrow and Sam Lenning and a host of others. He had a double Scotch whisky and proceeded to take a hand in the game of swapping improper stories. At one time something seemed to jog his consciousness and say, "Do you really think much of this kind of thing, old boy?" And another voice replied, "What does it matter? They've just arrived at Brighton railway station. In another 10 minutes they'll be at the ship." "I thought you were going to have a chop at 6:30, Willie," someone remarked to him suddenly. "So I am, old boy." "It's 7:15 now." Good gracious, so it was. Well, he didn't particularly want a chop. He would have a couple of sandwiches and another double Scotch. He was quite himself again in his dressing-room at the theatre. He loved the smell of grease paint and spirit gum, the contact of fantastic whiskers and clothes, a rather shabby mirror under a strong light. His first song was to be Old Fags, the feckless ruffian who picks up cigarette ends. The dresser, whose name was Flood, and who always called him Mr. Nelly, was ready with his 3 changes. "Number 5's on," came the message down the corridors. Good. There was only Charlemagne the equilibriist between him and his people. Willy-nilly had got to love his people, as he mentally designated them. He knew them, and they knew him, the reward of many years' hard work. He loved stumbling down the corridors through the iron doors and groping his way amidst the dim medley of the wings, where gorgeous unreal women and men in bowler hats patted him as he passed and whispered, "Oh, Willie, old boy, good luck." He loved to wait there and hear his number go up. The roar of welcome which greeted it was music to his ear. "Number 7." The orchestra played the opening bars. Then, with a queer shuffle, he was before them, a preposterous figure with a bright red nose, a miniature bowler hat, and a fearful old suit with ferns growing out of the seams, and a heavy sack slung across his back. Old fags, see my collection of old fags. If you want to be happy, if you want to be gay, empty your sack at the fag end of the day. Oh, yes, you ought to see willy-nilly in old fags. The habitué of the realm empire will tell you all about him. The doleful, wheezy voice, the quaint antics, then the screamingly funny business when he empties the sack of cigarette ends all over the stage. And, of course, at the bottom is a bottle of gin and a complete set of ladies' undies, apparently new and trimmed in pink. Then the business of finding innumerable cigarette ends in his unmanageable beard. On that night, willy-nilly was at his best. A lightning change, and he came on as the carpet salesman, in which he brought on a roll of carpet, the opportunities concerning which are obvious. Then followed the lady who works for the lady next door. The inevitable encore, prepared for and expected, followed. A terrible Russian, more whiskers, red this time, singing, "Oh, Maryvich, oh, Adavich, I don't know which ich lieber dich. I told your pa I got the itch, he promptly hit me on the stitch." It was difficult for Willie to escape after this valiant satirical digression. He fled perspiring to his dressing-room. "Give me a drink, old boy," he gasped to the lugubrious flood. He had smothered his face in cocoa butter when there was a knock on the door. "Mr. Peter Wilberforce, representing the Railham Mercury." "Ah, yes, come in, old boy." Mr. Wilberforce was in no hurry to depart. He had a spot, just a couple of fingers, old boy, of whisky. He wanted a column of bright stuff for the next issue of the weekly. Is Railham behind other suburbs in humour? Interview with the famous willy-nilly, our local product. "You just give me a lead," said Mr. Wilberforce. "I'll fill in the padding." Willy-nilly found turning out the bright stuff immediately after his performance the most exhausting experience of the day. He was quite relieved when, at the end of 40 minutes, there was a knock at the door, and a woman with a lanky son was shown in. This was the young man who wanted to go on the stage. The pressman departed, and the mother started forth on a long harangue about what people said about her son's remarkable genius for acting. Before willy-nilly knew where he was listening to the boy giving imitations of Beerbohm Tree and Henry Ainley. It was quite easy to tell which was meant to be which, and so Willie grasped the young man's hand and said, "Very good, old boy, very good." He promised to do what he could, but by the time the mother had gone all over the same ground 3 times, he found it was too late to pop round to the club again. It was nearly time to make up for the second show. He dozed in the chair for a few moments. Suddenly he thought, "They've had dinner. They're probably taking a stroll on the front before turning in." He poured himself out another tot of whisky and picked up his red nose. "Oh, God, how tired I feel. Not quite the old man you were, old boy." He found it a terrible effort to go on that second time. Old fags seemed flat. He began to be subtly aware that the audience knew that he knew that the song wasn't really funny at all. At the end, the applause was mild. The carpet salesman went even worse. "Pull yourself together, old boy," he muttered as he staggered off. "It wouldn't do. A man who tops the bill can't afford not to bring the house down with every song." He made a superhuman effort with "The Lady Who Works for the Lady Next Door." It certainly went better than the others, just well enough to take an encore rather quickly. On this occasion he altered his encore. Instead of Marevich, he sang a hilarious song with the refrain, "Oh my, hold me down, my wife's gone away till Monday." At the end of the second verse he felt that he had got them. Success excited him. He went for it for all he was worth. Willy-nilly was himself again. The house roared at him. He had the greatest difficulty in escaping without giving a further encore. As he stumbled up the stone staircase to his dressing-room, he suddenly thought, "They've gone to bed now." The imperturbable Flood followed him, laden with properties. "I'll just have one more spot, Flood, old boy." How tired he was! He cleaned up languidly and got into his normal clothes. "Well, that's that, old boy," he said to Flood. "Now I think we'll toddle off to our bye-byes. Excuse me, Mr. Nilly, wasn't you going round to Mr. Bergcraft's?" "Eh? Oh, yes, for sure. He'd forgotten about poor old Bird. Well, I couldn't exactly let an old pal in. Well, he would just have a cab and hang the expense. Just stay a few minutes. Dear old Bird would understand." But he stayed an hour at Birdcraft's. He listened to 3 new comic songs and a lot of patter. "Yes, you've got a widder there, old boy," he remarked at the end of each song. It was nearly 1 o'clock when he groped his way up the dim staircase of his own house. The bedroom looked bleak and uninteresting. It had never struck him before in quite that way. He had always liked his bedroom with his heavy mahogany furniture and his red plush curtains, but somehow tonight the place seemed forlorn, as though something was terribly lacking. "You're tired, old boy." He undressed and threw his clothes carelessly on chairs and tables. He got into bed and regarded the room, trying with his tired brain to think what was wrong. His clothes ought not to have been thrown about like that, of course. He felt that they and he were out of place in the large room. A strange feeling of melancholy crept over him. "It's badly ordered. It's all badly ordered, old boy." He had a great desire to cry, so weak he felt. But no, a man mustn't do that. A funny man certainly mustn't. His mind wandered back to his old mother. He remembered the days when she had taught him to pray. He would give anything for the relief of prayer, but he couldn't do that either. Didn't seem exactly playing the game. He put all that kind of thing by so long ago. He despised those people who lead unvirtuous lives and then in the end turn religious. He wasn't going to pretend. He turned out the light and closed his eyes. He would neither weep nor pray, but he must express himself somehow. Perhaps he compromised between these 2 human frailties. Certainly his voice was very near a sob, and his accent vividly alive with prayer, as he cried to the darkness, "Charlie, old boy, be good to her. For God's sake, be good to her." End of The Funny Man's Day